Hey guys, welcome to Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God. And we want to do a new series of videos along with all the other series that we have going on. Sarah right now is wrapping up an Overwhelmed Mama series, and that is something like 10 or 12, 15 parts. So you might want to check that out. The Overwhelmed Mama series, talking about the stresses of being a mom at home and home educating our children and cooking meals and preparation and all the things that can be very busy for us and could lead us to become dissatisfied with our circumstances and see our families or even our homes as more of a burden than a blessing. So you really want to check out that series. So this is a new series that we wanted to do, and I mentioned it to Sarah before, and I think we're all convinced that I'm the better person to do this series of videos because I really like to tell stories. Now, normally you will see my stories in written form. I normally don't sit in front of the camera very often. So we hope you enjoy this new series, which will be just testimonies of God's grace in our lives and our families' lives. So we have seen, even in our weakness, even in our times of trial, maybe lack of faith, difficult circumstances, we have seen how sometimes we fail and sometimes we stumble, and yet God is faithful, because God is faithful even if we're faithless. He remains faithful because that is the character of God, to be faithful. So we hope that you will join us on this new series of videos, testimonies of God's grace in the lives of our family. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll get on with the new video in just a moment. So today's story of God's grace in the life of our family comes, this is a story that happened many years ago. I'm trying to think, it was maybe January or February of 2009. We had just, in January of 2009, had taken our 5-bedroom, 2-bathroom house and our 3 children and our baby that was due at that time. Sarah was about 6 months pregnant. We packed all of that up and we moved into a 24-foot fifth wheel travel trailer, and we went out to Ohio for a couple of weeks and worked with Transport for Christ, which is a ministry that gets the gospel and just encouragement, and even more like a local church setting for truckers who were on the road all the time. And we worked with a couple of chapels, one in Beaver Dam, Ohio, one in Perrysburg, Ohio. I think there was another one, I can't remember exactly where it was though, another in Ohio, working with Transport for Christ. And after that, we went, my former business partner, when we did carpentry together, we also did ministry together, evangelism together, and eventually our family did as his family had done and packed up and sold our house and traveled around. At first we thought that was going to be for like 6 weeks, and it turned out it was for almost 3 years. From the time we left till the time we stopped doing that sort of ministry, and the Lord has moved us on to new things over the course of these years. So yeah, and about 15 years ago right now, we were leaving our home in Maine, and we traveled out to Ohio. We were there for a few weeks with the Transport for Christ, and then our friend invited us to join them in North Richland Hills, Fort Worth, Texas area. There was a small church there that wanted to get the gospel out in their community, and so we went to join them in that work, and we went out and we knocked on doors, many hours, many days. We had kids clubs, we had events in the community, we had a movie night, we did all sorts of things to try to encourage and equip and just help this small church to get the gospel out to their neighborhood, and Lord willing to see growth in that local church. And I think we did see that, and we spent about a month there. So this is where the story comes in. As we were leaving Fort Worth, Texas, we had originally thought, well, maybe we'd just head home back to Maine, because we hadn't yet been convinced that we would continue this lifestyle. We really thought it would be a short-term thing, and it wasn't. So come the end of January, when we were getting ready to leave North Richland Hills, Texas, there were 2 churches out in the San Diego, California area that had invited us to come out. They had a place for us to stay. They had people for us to work with. They had teams of people going out in the community doing various forms of evangelism and wanted our help. So we went, packed our stuff and packed our campers, and off we went. 2 families, one driving a big, I think it was a 12-passenger Dodge 3/4 ton van, towing a 38-foot travel trailer, which was kind of too heavy for his load, but that comes up in a later story, actually. Maybe I'll tell that story on another Testimonies of God's Grace. And then our family, at the time, we had a pickup truck, just a quad cab pickup truck, and towing that 24-foot fifth wheel travel trailer. And so we took off from Fort Worth, Texas, and in order to get to California, it's a lot of miles in a lot of days. It took us nearly a week to drive from Fort Worth all the way out to California. Now, we did have some obstacles along the way, which this story is sort of about that obstacle. So without further ado, I suppose I ought to actually get to my story. So I can't remember exactly where we were. I believe we were leaving Texas. So we were going across from Fort Worth, across towards El Paso, Texas, and we're driving on the interstate, and we decided to take this side route, which is going to take us a slightly different direction. But we really needed gas sometime in the near future, so we thought getting off the major highway interstate onto the possibly business designated interstate would take us hopefully to find some gas, maybe something to see, maybe some fun place to stop and meet some people. But we didn't find anything of that. In fact, we didn't find any gas stations either for quite some time. We were then driving their van with their travel trailer and our truck and our fifth wheel attached to it with our children. I think they had 5 children at the time. We had 3 and then a baby on the way. So we're all driving across the middle of nowhere in western Texas, and we realized we needed fuel. And the GPS, which back then we had a GPS with the old point of interest, the POI thing, and you'd hit the category, and it had maybe a quarter of the gas stations in the area. They weren't logged in there. There wasn't all the data that we have today, where you can pick up gas stations and select various routes and look at the gas prices and toll charges and all those things you can do now. Couldn't do that back then. So we just had to take the GPS's word for it that this would be a better route for us. And we came to a T in the road, and our options were go left or right. Well, those are usually the options when you have a T in the road, aren't they? So if we went to the right, we were going to go 43 miles to the right to find a town to get gas. And then because of where we were on our route, we were going to then take those 43 miles and drive all the way back. So that's 86 miles out of the way. We decided that with the gas we had and the situation we were in, and just we decided not to pursue that that direction, to go to the right. We did go to the left, and I think at the left there was quite a bit of distance between the next gas station, but at least it was on the same basic route that we could follow that. So we decided to take that route. And as we came along, we did bump into a gas station, and the big sign out front said cactus jelly and gas. I think the cactus jelly sign was actually bigger than the gas, and to this day I don't know what cactus jelly is. So if anybody has cactus jelly information, feel free to share it in the comments. So anyhow, we stopped to get gas. These 2 vehicles from Maine, a Maine van hauling a Maine trailer, and then a Maine truck hauling a Maine trailer, and we pulled in and we got our gas topped off in one of those old like roll dial pump gas pumps. Really neat. And we went to talk to the guy inside. The guy inside was sitting there with a nasal cannula with oxygen into his nose, right? Because he has like COPD or emphysema or something like that. And he's sitting there smoking a cigarette with his nasal cannula. I'm assuming it was running, but it was under his nose. And he's smoking a cigarette, and he's looking out these pair of binoculars to the gas pump, because it doesn't have any sort of digital readout, and he didn't want to walk all the way out in the driveway in order to read it. So he would just tell you how much you owed him for gas based on his binocular vision. It was a really neat and sort of strange circumstance. But he's a very pleasant fellow, and he informed us that actually, well, it's a good thing that you stopped by today when you did, because my friend who actually owns this place isn't here, and he just asked me if I could come cover the gas station while he went in town to go to a doctor's appointment that day. So this man, thankfully, was running the gas station. We did indeed get gas. So after the morning we had had of driving around trying to find this place and trying to get gas, and kids are a little cranky and all of that, we said, let's just get in the campers and get out our lunch and eat a little early lunch. It's probably 10:30, 11 o'clock. So we started packing our lunch and all of these sorts of things. And then we look out, and there's another vehicle pulls up, and it's another truck hauling another camper. And I was like, this is weird, right? I mean, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere, West Texas. Why would there, why are there so many vehicles driving camper trailers here? And as I got looking at it, I realized it's another Maine license plate. So I said, okay, this is too good to be true. This is some sort of God coincidence, who knows? But thankfully, God had provided that we did find gas for our vehicles, and we got to our destination safely days later, and everything was good. And we ended up with this really neat story to tell, because when that car pulled up with the Maine plate, he pumped his gas, and as he got close to the fill line of his gas tank, the tank ran dry and there was no more gas to be had. So I'm glad we came when we did. And then we realized, oh, with this Maine plate, we should go out and see if, if these people are from our area, or, it would just say, hey, it's really neat, all these people from Maine found each other out in the desert in West Texas. So I get out of the camper and walk towards the vehicle, and the man who was pumping the gas gets out of, turns around and looks, and I said something about, oh, you're from Maine, and he said, Mark, right? Well, yeah, that's my name. My name is Mark. And I said, Scott? And he said, yeah. So this is getting a little weird, but we used to be foster parents years ago. And in our foster care, we had multiple kids over the course of a couple of years. But our very first foster care placement was a young man who's actually, him and his wife and their baby are coming over for dinner on Monday. And then I believe it was our second set of foster kids. I won't share any information about them, but anyhow, we ended up meeting with this young man, Scott, who was their caseworker at this time. So we had the kids, and normally on Sundays they went to see their grandmother because they weren't church people, and the family was kind of opposed to us being so overtly Christian. They're okay with you being Christian, but not if you actually read your Bible and pray and do those sorts of things. And it is a hard situation for the family, I'm certain. But for us, it was just, we're just going to live our lives and do what we do. And I got called in the office for a meeting because one Sunday the kid's grandmother wasn't available, so they went to church with us. And I said, it's funny because we didn't really teach a whole lot in church that day. It was a strange day for us. We had never before had a movie at church, but we had this movie at church, and we watched that video, and I had actually, so when I get called in the meeting, I had spoken to Scott about that video, and I actually brought him a copy and shared it with him and pointed him to the gospel through this really strange circumstance. And now here we are, a couple years later, and Scott and I are standing at a gas station in the middle of the desert in western Texas, and we're talking about this. And had they pulled up and there had been no gas, they probably would have just driven right off. But they didn't. They stopped and stayed and talked for a few minutes because, well, it was the only place to get gas, and we had just run the pump dry, all these three strange people from Maine. And we got looking around and talking about different things and walking around a bit. And I asked him about his camper because that's what men do. We talk about our vehicles and we talk about our campers, and we ask how it's hauling and what kind of gas mileage you're getting and all those kind of things. And we looked at the license plate on his trailer, on his camper trailer, and it was exactly one number different than our friend's. And I said, that's really strange. And he said, oh, your friend must have registered it in local Rockland, Maine here, Knox County. They must have registered the vehicle there because the license plate only one number different. And so we got talking to our friend, and it turns out that Scott was in Texas, having been in western Texas, having been in Fort Worth, Texas for about a month, which we had just been a month in Fort Worth, and they were headed to San Diego, and we were headed to San Diego at the same time in the same place, and yet neither of us knew this about each other. And I mentioned my friend, and he said, oh, that's weird, maybe we were sitting at DMV together getting our license plates. And I said, well, my friend's named this, and they lived here. And he said, oh, that's really strange, because his wife used to live in the backyard. There was a little bistro in the backyard of our friend's house back in Maine. And so they had actually, at one point, considered buying our friend's house. Our friends had gone out into full-time ministry and put their house up for sale. And Scott and his girlfriend, at the time, I think it was, possibly his wife, anyhow, they had also been leaving Maine about the same time, because while they were going to buy a house, he ended up getting laid off from his job, and I think things were slow at her job, and they just decided to take a road trip across the country and kind of find something new. And so here we are, we're all in Texas, and we run this gas pump dry, and we're talking to this guy, and we are able to share the gospel with him because of all these strange little circumstances. And God has orchestrated that entire thing. We've seen this so many times, time and time again, that you think things aren't going to go well, or you think something bad is going to happen, and you're kind of praying about it and asking God, what is it I'm supposed to do? How are you going to work in this circumstance to provide for our needs, or to keep us safe, or to give us opportunity to share the gospel with somebody? And lo and behold, the person from Maine that we had already shared the gospel with before, we had another opportunity to talk to. And we don't know. We've never seen these people again since then. 14 years later, 15 years later, we've never seen them again, and I have no idea what happened to them. And I really hope that someday we'll find out. Maybe in heaven we'll find out, and maybe not. I don't know what God does in these circumstances, but it's just a reminder to me that we ought always to be looking for opportunities to share the gospel, and we also ought to be looking to see God's providential work in action. Because a lot of times we don't, we're not paying attention, we're kind of focused on the circumstances at hand, and we may not have the perspective to see all that. But that's what this series is going to be about. It's not just cool stories of fun stuff that happened, but cool stories of fun stuff that happened where we see God at work, where we see God providing and protecting us. And I'm sure there's lots of other ways. Just driving a couple thousand miles on the interstate with a handful of kids and multiple vehicles, anything could go wrong. You can blow a tire, you can swerve off the road, you can have bad weather, you can have all sorts of things that could happen. And looking back over the years, we've had so many times that we can see that it is really the providence of God, the protection of God, that we haven't had a major car accident, and we haven't had a lot of things happen to us that do happen to people every day. I mean, the world is in a sinful state, and there's the remains of the curse still in the world, and we still have battles. And yet God is sovereignly orchestrating all of these things, and that he will be glorified in them. So we hope that you'll join us for some more installments of these testimonies from the road. I think next time we're probably going to have to tell the story of the goat trail in West Virginia. So if you'd like to learn more about a goat trail in West Virginia, we have stories to tell, and there's so many more. But I'll be recording another one soon, hopefully. But for today, thank you for joining us here on Herding Little Cows to the Glory of God. We hope you have a great day.